After a huge 5-0 win at Southampton, things feel a little calmer in the Tottenham fan base, at least for now. But with the biggest game of the season coming up against Manchester United on Thursday, we can ill afford to rest on our laurels. I'll be discussing everything with Jorri, who was pretty peeved off with Big Ange after his comments on Timo Werner last week. But how are you feeling now, Jorri?
I'm feeling better, like most of us, I think. Maybe slightly less confused, but still very confused. So
just for some context, guys, Jorri and I were having a lot of WhatsApp chats just before the Southampton game. And I did say during my watch along of the game that I felt like this was very much potentially a sliding doors moment for Ange. There were some leaks coming out from people saying they were close to Levy, or they'd heard comments that maybe if he lost at Southampton, that would be a problem. And then other leaks coming out saying that actually they were going to stick by him whatever happened. But really, as I mentioned in the opening, Jorri, for you, there was like almost, or what felt to me like you were very surprised by the way he singled out a player for the first time. And you felt that maybe that was showing that he was suddenly succumbing to the pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I thought, like just to give you a little bit kind of the timeline for me, So I watched the game. I watched your video after the game. I was a little bit surprised. What I saw in that game, to be honest, was Spurs absolutely struggling to play championship level football.
And we're talking about the Rangers game, aren't we?
The Rangers, sorry, yeah. I thought the Rangers weren't that good. They definitely turned up with much more of a fight than we did. I thought that I was seeing a similar thing from our senior players as with the Everton game when Mourinho was there. Like they were basically just maybe not throwing the game, but not turning up, basically. And I thought it was very. I thought Son and maybe Bentancur was kind of the most obvious in that regard. Of course, that might just be speculation. But then when I saw the comments on Timo afterwards, I kind of assumed that there had been some kind of bust up in the dressing room. And I felt like, I agreed with him. Timo was by far the worst on the pitch. But I also thought it was completely pointless to take that rant on Timo. He's on loan. There's a couple of weeks he'll be gone if you don't want him, And so I felt like it was really directed at maybe the forward line, yeah, but just at the players in general. And I thought it was, I don't want to piss anybody off really that watches here and so on. But for me, I thought it was desperation, weakness, showing that he wasn't in control, and also just I thought it was so stupid in a political sense, because whatever you have there, I thought he was killing the conversation, especially with a guy like Sonny, who's the captain.
Right.
The last thing you should do is throw one of his players under the bus. Like Sonny won't take kindly to that, So I thought it was so stupid, and for me it was kind of like and that's when I sent you all the messages. I thought, okay, it's over. He basically shot himself in the foot now. There's no coming back from this. But then, of course, we had the Saints game, and it was definitely completely different. But also what I found notable there was that we were playing prime concept ball in that game. We had a beautiful mid block, managed the game the whole time really well, without any real pressure on our team. And Sonny was playing on the shoulder and so on, So for me now, it's almost like it might also be a case of the players just playing what they feel is the right to play now, because this is very little to do with anything I connect with Ange's ball. But like I said, I'm very confused. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I definitely do think that the rumors about Levy being ready to fire him, I think Levy wants to fire him now. I think the only thing stopping Levy from firing him is that Ange still has a little bit of backup with the boys and also in the fan community. That win, of course, bought him some time now. And if it is like I fear it is, then the maybe the silver lining is that, of course, a little bit of success can heal a lot of wounds quickly. So, we can maybe hope that that's the case here. So,
yeah.
But for me, also, I have to just finish. For me,
Sure.
I've been answering and quite a lot now when the pressure has been on, even more really. But I've never loved the guy. I really can't stand his presses, to be honest. I feel like it's some kind of like he's writing his own story about himself and his life experience and stuff like that. It's never about real football talk, I feel like. And like if he, wanted to go to the pub with me, I would say, nah, I'm just going to go with Barnaby instead.
Well, that's annoying. That's annoying for you, Jorri, because I would say yes, and I'd bring him with me.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sure you would make it work somehow.
Yeah. Jay just said in the chat, Matters alluded to the gravity of the Saints win. Let's see if it sticks. And it was actually, that was interesting to see him come out and talk like that, but also some kind of photos of him in the changing room with Bergvall and Sarr saying like a father and his two sons, just kind of showing a little bit more leadership than we've seen from him before. I just want to go back to what you said about Werner, just because we haven't had the chance to talk about it. The thing that interested me about that, now, what I can imagine, playing devil's advocate a little bit, is that he chose to throw a player under the bus for the first time who was the player that isn't contracted to the club, right? So I can see it on that basis. Yeah. But on the flip of that, I could also say he's also picked the weakest player. He's also picked the player, it's punching down. He's picked the player who has the least confidence. And that's not a good look. And that's where I would agree with you a little bit on when Ange comes across a little, I don't want to say a little too Australian, but when I say that, what I mean is they're very strong-willed, kind of single-minded people as a result and as a rule, and he chose himself over Werner at that point. Absolutely, that's where I will agree with you.
What the thing you call a little bit too Australian is something like, and this is also just so people understand it, like the type, the kind of personality type that we see in the presser and in the public with Ange is a type that I constantly run into in my work on film sets and stuff like that, and I never get along with that type. I think it's fake macho, and never taking responsibility, always deflecting and stuff like that. But I still stand by everything else, which is that, for example, Ange has done a lot to put pressure on the club, the community, the whole Tottenham, not finding excuses, whatever. I do feel like it's hypocritical, of course, that he then finds excuses for himself. The worst one right now was the one about having 3 centre-backs out, when clearly he made a desperate move that most of us could see was the wrong move to make with Cudi and VDV in the Chelsea game. But, I don't care about that. But I do think that this kind of personality trait, some people take it as genuine and like it. I think the English respond a little bit more to it. Yeah, I think you're deceived a little bit more to it. You're so courteous and so nice, and yeah. So
I think from my point of view, I think it's interesting that you say the English seem to kind of fall for it a bit more, because I do kind of, the way I look at Ange in press conferences, and I'm talking specifically about press conferences, is I just think he hates them. I think he hates them, and he has a disdain. He has a disdain for the fact that he has to do them. Now, playing devil's advocate to exactly what I just said is that, well, don't sign up to the Premier League, mate, because that's the reality you have to do. And actually, compared to Spurs, and I'm sure you saw some of the comments from Ruben Amorim early when he came into Manchester United. At Man United or at Man City, you'd have to do 3 times the amount or 4 times the amount of press stuff than you do at Spurs even. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so you can't have it both ways. I think it is what I'm saying. But the reason why
I feel like if you take, for example, Man City, if you take Pep now, Pep is in a terrible moment now.
Yeah.
But I love what Pep is doing. He's both, the fighting guy. He's both personal, talking about his personal. It's not that I mind people talking about personal stuff, but Pep always brings it back to some football insight. And I like rarely feel that we get any real football insight with Ange. So, and also I feel like Pep is of course he can also be deceptive, and I'm not saying that, but I feel like in general it's always about him, both good and bad, really, when it comes down to it. I don't feel the same with Ange. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of pick and choose when it's about him, and
I guess one of the things that keeps me thinking that it's all a bit of a game for him is that the players, I mean, so I know we've had a few discussions about the players, but let's say Decky and QT for sure. They love him. They love the way and I think they love the honesty. And so it must be a lot more honest on the training ground than it is in his press conferences.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, because I do, if and that was one thing I was hating about the Glasgow game as I saw it, was that I felt the players were once again throwing a manager under the bus there, starting to. It wasn't the final straw, but I thought that was now, and that's why I thought we would lose at Saints, but
I did too, I should say, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows what we know, Jorri.
Well, I think you were kind of right, because you were sensing the same things, maybe from another kind of point of view, but you were sensing the same things as I was sensing, that the time was kind of up with that. But I also feel like so I hate that part of it. I hate that player power part of it. But also we're here. We have Sonny, for example. Now thinking back on it, and this is me over analyzing maybe a little bit, but really, if you think about it, who could it else be? The whole extension of Sonny's contract, I think that was Ange behind that, because Sonny isn't ideal for what Ange wants to do. So he might want the money and just keep on. I know that Levy would keep Sonny there until he's 80, as long as the Koreans keep supporting the club, So so I don't believe that it's Levy thinking about not extending Sonny's contract. I think it came from Ange, and that
just for the audience's sake. So let them know exactly your theory on that. So is it basically that you think Ange is suggesting to the club that maybe we shouldn't exercise the option, and let Sonny go in the summer, but in which case that would be for free. There would be no money for that.
Yes, but it would also mean that Ange can progress his stuff quicker for him. So and I think, to be honest, I mean, they might have gone, then the next option would be maybe to try and find something this January to get some money, but maybe I'm completely out there, but I do feel like I don't see anybody else in Tottenham that would even entertain that idea. I don't know. Maybe so I can't maybe know what exactly it is that Ange would see as a benefit from that, but I mean, for me, I think it's because he will get more control over the squad, and he will get a forward position that will then can be molded more into what he needs for his system. But
do you think
it's a strange one either way you look at it? Whether you don't think it's Ange or not, it's really baffling that you wouldn't exercise that option at this point in time.
But
So.
I do you think then, I'm going to put it to you, because I don't think this would happen. I don't think Levy would care if Ange said to him, we shouldn't keep Son on. I think Levy would be like, well, I'm obviously going to exercise the option, and then sure, we'll try and get some money for him with 1 year left on his deal. I personally, and I do think yours is an interesting angle, and I would say definitely Sonny's form has dropped off. But on the flip to that, what I'd say is when he scored that goal against Southampton, he looked so relieved, clearly knowing that his form hasn't been there. So it's not, I don't think it's that he's down tools or anything like that. But I think Levy wouldn't listen to something like that. I think Sonny is too much of a cash cow for that. And obviously, actually, this kind of relates well to the fact that yesterday we saw all those videos of Yang Min-hyuk at at Seoul Airport coming to London and being very emotional or whatever. I also don't think that realistically Spurs would be making any kind of good decision to let this young South Korean boy with no top level experience at all come into the club and not have Sonny around for very long to help him out.
No, I agree with that. But then the thing is, this is the only scenario I can see that would cause that hiccup, cause that. So I do think that Levy might, in a spirit of backing his manager, might entertain the conversation, and that's what causing this delay, and the Sonny camp surprised that it isn't just done and over with as soon as it's mentioned, which was kind of what it happened. I never thought that it wouldn't happen. I think Levy is not one to delay these kind of things in general. So I really can't see anybody else in the club. I mean, if you're saying it's not from Ange, Barnaby, aren't you really saying that it would be from the board? I mean, who would else be delaying this?
Well, I would say maybe Sonny, because what if he's heard that he's had what if he's heard that there's some interest from a Barcelona or someone like that, who obviously have a bit of a history of taking, older strikers like Lewandowski and it working out, and he's like, actually, maybe this is my last chance for a proper big move for some trophies in Europe.
But I mean, that would be absolutely the most reasonable version. But the thing is, we heard about the problems from Sonny's camp. It wasn't from inside. At least that's how I read it. Was that they were surprised that it wasn't done. So. But it's also rumor land and stuff.
Would you keep, if you were Ange, would you keep Sonny for? Would you ask the board to extend that for 1 more year and have him in the squad?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really doesn't matter what manager you are. I think you have to finish until Sonny wants to try something other out. I do think it's a problem for a manager like Ange to have a senior player that doesn't really fit what he's trying to do with this forward line. But that's what we're maybe coming into, because I think now I'm really interested to see. So what I'm going to say now, Barnaby, is like, if we're playing like we played against Saints, I think it's likely that we win United. If we go back to these kind of spurts of Ange ball, we're going to lose that game. So I am very interested in seeing, and I will definitely take it as Ange is kind of sidelined when it comes to tactics now. If I think the senior players, and we saw it with Mourinho. I remember with Mourinho, it was a question of application, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they started turning up for certain games, and you had to conclude then, well, the players are playing because it's going to affect going forward, or they are playing for their own pride or whatever. It wasn't what Mourinho had been trying. So many times when we see these, flip-flop kind of situations, which we're seeing now, I think it has a lot more to do with senior players than we realize sometimes. So
is there Is there a chance though? Because the way I looked at it, and I think that is interesting. The way I look at it though is, once again, we played a team who wanted to come out and try and play against us, and therefore we had the space, and Sonny suddenly had the space in behind for the first time in a while as well. Just similar to, first 10, 15 minutes against Chelsea and Manchester United away and Man City away. It's like and Aston Villa. And when we play these teams who leave the spaces where we want them to be, it really works for us. Is it not more like that? And then actually, just to finish on that, that's where I'm really worried about Manchester United, because Amorim is just playing Conte ball. Like it is like watching Conte ball. They're in the 3-4-3. He actually said yesterday, I think it was, something that I've been saying for years, which is that Harry Maguire is a brilliant defender in a 3. He said Harry Maguire is perfect. So they will kind of shut up shop. Spurs will struggle to break them down in their deep block, and they'll pick us off. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, me too. And we'll lose. I think even we're going to lose badly if we try to play handball against them. But like I said, for me, first of all, let's just get it straight. Southampton, I don't even remember a game where I've seen a team get as much space as we got in that game in the Premier League. It was unbelievable. I think they basically just, knew what was coming, and for them it was just the final game for the manager, basically. I'm not taking anything away from the boys, though. I thought they played really nicely, actually, but I do think that this one kind of shows exactly how our goal distribution is and why it is, because and in this game, actually, it was also due to our own management of the game, which was good, which was Conte-esque in my view.
Right.
And I applaud that and want more of that now going forward while we're in this crisis, because that's a way that we can contain the damage and maybe even get some joy. But what we get is, like, we go out and play like a Chelsea. We have these spurts and we get 2 goals in, but we collapse after that. And then all the goals are nullified by goals coming in at our end, basically. So we lose a 3-2 or a 2-1 or 4-3 or whatever. But then we meet teams that don't have the quality and don't have the discipline to kind of go again. And then we get the 4-0 and the 5-0 and stuff like that, So that's exactly what we see about our goal distribution. Is like, teams that don't give us space and actually put up a real fight and have real quality, we manage maybe to get 1 or 2 goals in these spurts of handball. And then once the pressure comes back on us, we collapse because we're out of breath, we're overstretched, or whatever. You can have your own explanation for why we're not able to keep up the handball for 90 minutes, but we're not, and we're not doing it. We haven't been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's where the goals come in, So for me, it's very clear. You play handball against these better sides, you better make sure you score 4, because that's the only chance you have of trying to win that game. And we don't, our forward line doesn't score 4 in 20 minutes. They score 2 maybe, or whatever.
Unless we're playing Southampton.
Yeah, exactly.
And I agree with you. They were actually up there with the worst team I've ever seen Spurs play, and which I found interesting because they haven't been pumped by other teams the way we did. But like you said, I think you're probably right. They knew that it was the end for Martin.
Yeah.
Let's try and latch on to some positives, though. I want to hear what you think about Jed Spence and Lucas Bergvall's performances. I
thought Jed was really, really, he looked brilliant, to be honest. His physicality, his speed, his reading of the game, his lack of, there wasn't a timid bone in him. He was up for it. He completely took it like it's been his position all season, so I was super happy to see that. It puts, of course, a big cloud over that decision. Why have we waited so long for it? Because the other times we've seen it, it's been similar for my taste. It's been, I've always been pretty happy with all his cameos. So hopefully we at least can just put that behind us and start playing him in a regular rotation now. So he was.
Can I just ask then, because exactly what you're saying, that there has to be some and obviously it started way back with Conte and the club signing stuff and whatever. There has to be, for me, something about his, what I imagine to be like a lackadaisical attitude on the training ground that winds managers up. But there are some players, and I said this in the watch along the other night, and I probably said it in my reaction as well. There are some players in the history of football where you hear from their teammates after they've retired, and sometimes even when they're playing, they're just like, they're the worst trainers. They're the worst trainers. But when you get them on the pitch, they're turned on by it. And maybe Jed Spence is one of them, and maybe it's just that, the Spurs managers that have managed him in his time here, including Big Ange, have just been like, I can't play him because if I play him, the other players will think, well, he doesn't even work hard in training. But then you get him on the pitch, and he was, like you said, you talked about the physicality. That's so important to me. We're not a big side, and he was strong, and his recovery pace, and he was working really hard as well. And that's without even mentioning, the first 30 seconds where he was so brave and also had the technical ability to back up that braveness and slip in a brilliantly weighted through ball.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of the training stuff, Barnaby, even though I could see a scenario like that, but Ange has gone out of his way talking about that he's actually very good at, he's turning up at training and stuff like that. But to be honest, if you think about it, what would Conte and Ange have in common as a gripe against a player like that? And for me, this guy is very anti-authoritarian just in his personality. He doesn't take kindly to a father figure, barking at him and so on. He doesn't take it seriously, and I think that will rub both of these guys the wrong way, So I think it's probably something to do with that. And to be honest, I think that kind of personality is actually something that's needed on the pitch for us. That's a guy true. that doesn't really listen to anybody else, sees his own solutions and takes his own responsibility and goes and does it. Sometimes he will fuck it completely up for the whole squad, but sometimes he's actually the guy stepping up and turning things around,
Yeah, really good point, actually, because that really reminds me of that period where he had his best form in football, Jed Spence, when he played every week with Brennan Johnson at Forest, got them promoted. And that was under Steve Cooper. And Steve Cooper was such an arm round the shoulder manager rather than a tell you what to do, shout at you manager. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And I can tell you once again, as a father of 5, some of your kids have this ability. They don't do much, they're not being that naughty, but they have an ability to deliver it in a fashion that completely undermines your authority, and it completely sets you off, So I think he's one of those, to be honest. He kind of has he has a glint in his eye and a smirk.
He does.
And these guys, Conte and Ange, really want them to submit and just be malleable for their thing, and he's not a guy that's going to do that, I think. So
very good point, and I think that counts for some of his loan moves as well. So let's go to Scandinavia, where you're happiest, and tell me about Bergvall's performance from your point of view, because for me, he's been coming on the last few weeks in terms of his growth and his confidence, and it's back now, I think, to what I saw in preseason that made me so excited.
Exactly. I think it's just a steady progression, and I think sometimes he gets a little bit scared, sometimes, and there was in the game there, he got closed down and stuff like that, and a little bit of a panic. I think he's a little bit too stressed, he could use some of that Spence kind of confidence in some moments, but in terms of playing, he's definitely just progressing super nicely, and I think he should quickly, also start to be a part of the rotation in our first team. Before the season's over, he should be a fixture, I think.
I agree, and it's interesting because he clearly has it. I know it's a really easy comparison just because they're both from a similar area, but he really makes me think of Ødegaard in terms of wanting to get on the ball all the time, and I think the only thing stopping him from being exactly as good as Ødegaard is just his youth and lack of experience. And if you remember Ødegaard, he was like the next big thing from the age of like 14, and he got his Real Madrid move incredibly young, and it's just a matter of time and experience and belief that got him to kind of where he is now. And what I love about Bergvall, though, and this is what my main point I wanted to say, is he continually comes for it. He continually wants it. Even if he's had it nicked away from him the last time, he'll come for it again. And actually, now I'm not saying Bergvall is probably as good yet as Yves Bissouma is, but I trust that Bergvall will not do what Bissouma did in that Chelsea game. Like he will not make a reckless, idiotic challenge in his own box at a point in a game where that's the last thing you want.
Yeah, no. But the risk with Bergvall at this moment now might be that he could get bullied out of the ball in a sensitive area in the middle and stuff like that. Whereas Bissouma would put up maybe a bit of more of a fight. But I think that will go away pretty quickly with Bergvall, because he's not a lightweight as such. He has some physicality about him, and
he does.
And it's more about him just understanding that he shouldn't be scared of his own mistakes or anything. And once that goes away, I think he's going to take another level up in terms of his playing. But I feel like in general, and you mentioned Ødegaard and stuff like that, and this is, for me, I grew up when Michael Laudrup was the biggest player in Scandinavia and in Denmark, of course. And ever since Laudrup, there's been this constant, and I guess it's everywhere, but Laudrup was kind of the prototype in Scandinavia for that 10, the playmaker, basically. And you see it still to this day. You see these kind of heads up scanning kind of players at a very young age, the playmaker type.
Eriksen,
exactly.
Yeah.
Eriksen was he has watched every second of Michael Laudrup's career, and so on, and these players are exactly the kind of players that can go and just completely make a team, So I think we should be excited about Bergvall, and hopefully we can get him just into the lineup, fixed rotation, and we can start next season with some really, really strong creative options, So
it's just occurred to me, and this, I'm not saying this is what I want, but it is a possibility that it would benefit us to lose Sonny on the basis that it would allow the next generation of players to kind of lead their way up the kind of hierarchy of belief within the team. Do you know what I mean? That kind of that thing that you see in players quite often when the kind of generation ahead of them leave. And obviously Sonny is really, other than Ben Davies, who I don't think really counts, Sonny is the only one left. And actually that next generation, I'm talking not really Bergvall, but more like Johnson, Sarr, who I think had a magnificent game, by the way, and I just want him to start showing the consistency. And actually I think Sarr's probably a good example. If Sarr suddenly knew that he was going to, say Bissouma left and maybe even Bentancur left, and I don't want that to happen, Sarr would suddenly know that he's the most important man in that midfield. And I feel like straight away, due to kind of rising up the hierarchy of the club and the team, he would take more responsibility. That's what I'm talking about. And that,
I know exactly what you. It's basically they will then really take on the role fully and grow with it. And I think definitely that's always a super tricky part of transition. The same could be said for Kane.
It was.
That was one of my things is about he also just wanted the guy to have a chance at what he's doing now and stuff like that. But there, when you have these kind of seminal players in your club, you have to play them, and there is maybe, in some cases they can progress with a new manager, with new systems and stuff like that. But also they are exactly kind of taking the weight and responsibility off the shoulders of the coming superstars, and not until they're gone will they fully adapt that role themselves, and I definitely think so. And it's good that you mentioned Sarr, to be honest, because I think Sarr, if we don't mishandle that, I think Sarr's going to be a superstar. I mean, I think Sarr's going to go and become a midfielder. Like the biggest clubs in Europe are going to be after Sarr in a couple of years, So we really have to be careful at this moment where he has some blips, and also we also have to be honest about, it's not necessarily Sarr, but just the whole thing. Maybe it's the manager sometimes and stuff like that. Don't forget what we see from him. And that is the player, and that I can say that about the whole squad in general, and it's on the coaches to get it right, to be honest, and yeah.
Yeah, just before I come on to the last topic, I thought worth bringing up at this point, because last night I watched that or a fair bit of the Bournemouth-West Ham game, and I have to say the way Bournemouth played, it's the closest I've seen to Pochettino ball at Spurs. It's very similar. So defensively, pretty tight, but allowing the centre-backs to, beat a man if they want to and drive forward, but also just popping it about. And I could, if Scott Munn and Levy and Langer weren't watching that, and if you look at all the stats, they were showing a lot of the stats of Bournemouth City and how they should be scoring a lot more goals than they even are. You could definitely see that he will be on the list for if and when. And I'm not saying I want Ange to go at this point, but I'm saying if and when, I'm sure he'll be high up the list, Iraola.
I think so too. I mean, they should. They aren't doing their homework if he ain't. And I would agree. I also rate Silva quite a lot, but I do feel like, and it's good that you mentioned exactly the similarity with Poch, because I was actually, when I was in my crisis after the Rangers game, I was kind of thinking like, I don't think anything, or like, I was struggling, but then I thought, well, maybe actually Poch would be able to fix something here and get it on the right roll and stuff like that. But so, and then I was thinking also just in terms of the football, with having a Sonny and a Maddison, but also having these super quick players like Johnson and stuff like that. But I do feel like for me, and I'm still answering, as long as I thought Ange threw a hand grenade in with that Timo rant and destroyed it all for all of us, but apparently it wasn't like that. So I'm still answering, as long as he doesn't lose the dresser. I mean, when he loses the dresser, there's no point of what we are in or out or whatever. Then it's over. Because also I think Levy wants him out now. I do think that Levy is just waiting for the excuse to get him out now. Because
certainly that Kulusevski chant, anti-Levy Kulusevski chant, is it's usually the straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Exactly, and we're going to hear that loudly, I think, in the stadium next time. So, but I don't think that's the primary thing. I think the primary thing, to be honest, Barnaby, is that Levy is looking at us not having any extra games next season. And that's unacceptable for me. One thing is not having Champions League games, but having no extra European games is not acceptable for Levy. So I think Ange is in a very precarious way. And I think that he should really be careful not to piss the boys off, because then he's done for, I think.
And the potential lack of European football next year brings us nicely onto Thursday night's Man United game. Mentioned it a little bit. I feel from some of Ange's comments that he is certainly taking this very seriously, and almost I think it's to our benefit actually that I don't think we have the players for him to have a chance to rotate really. And I think the crowd will be they will actually really try and make themselves a 12th man on Thursday. It's huge for everyone. But the problem, I think, is, like I said, Amorim just being very narrow and tight now, and do United have the kind of ammunition to hit us on the break? Yeah, I think they do. It's a bit of a worry.
United not that it's that different of a team that we've seen, but there are key components, and of course Ahmed is one of them, but just in general, how he manages and how he wriggles through a game already. I feel like you alluded to, like he's very reactive, very clever about his tactics, and we've seen that from Lisbon for years, So I definitely think it's a very difficult game in that manner. But I do feel like if we can get to play a little bit of a mid block and have Sonny on the shoulder and maybe Johnson on the other shoulder, whatever. But basically play our run in behind type break football.
Yeah.
Then we will get enough goals to get it over the line. And like that was really what I liked the most about the Southampton game, even though we always love seeing a good goal, was to see, not that they were under much pressure, but I love to see how they managed the game, how they didn't like I'm not that worried about them now playing this game, because I was actually worried. I almost thought like we even though it's difficult losing or taking a risk with the points, I almost felt like it was more important to rest Sonny the whole game or whatever for the United game. But now I feel okay because it wasn't that, like, it was a training session for the boys, I think, in terms of
the second half.
Yeah, in terms of what they had to put into it, and so I just hope that we see that, Barnaby. If we,
There should be space. There should be space in behind their wing backs, shouldn't there? That's where the space should be for Sonny and Johnson, because and then that will pull across the wide centre halves, and then there's space in the middle for Solanke.
Yeah, but also this being Amorim, I wouldn't be surprised that he sees that that's our setup and he'll just park the bus a little bit, So, and that's when we're gonna have problems, I think.
Well, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say I think it's going to go to penalties, and I'm scared about that. Jorri, what do you think? What's your prediction for the game?
Well, if it's going to penalties, we're not winning that game. That's.
Well, wait, hold on. Fraser Forster has surprised us all. Let's mention Fraser Forster. What an incredible backup he's proven to be.
Yeah, and that's also another factor that we need to put into this, that really things are worse than we actually are experiencing, and that's because Forster has basically saved our skin at least twice, I would say. The Glasgow game, we should have, I'm not even sure that Wick would have kept us into that. The saves he made were amazing.
But also, how huge is it? Sorry to interrupt, but how huge is it that no longer our teams putting corners on the head of our goalkeeper, because he's calmed it all down for us?
Exactly. Yeah, and for me also, it's kind of like, I don't know how the training, at least I would definitely say, Forster, you can teach Vic a lot about managing your box, not that he's the best in the world or anything, but it's just basics that Forster doesn't even think twice about and just does the right way, whereas Vic is kind of trying to decide in the moment and stuff and makes the wrong decision.
He's panicking a lot, isn't he?
Yeah.
United.
Yeah, he's been brilliant and big up to him. But as brilliant as he is, Barnaby, he's never getting down quickly, and
he's been getting down quicker than I thought he would.
Definitely, but on a penalty also, he needs to get going, on Monday, and your player's not gonna touch the ball till Friday, so the player knows. So I don't let's not get it to penalties. Let's have the game over with before that.
All right,
That's
fair enough.
my real quote. Yeah.
Jorri, thank you so much for coming on. Another great chat as ever. And guys, this has been a live show on Big Up. Please do subscribe to the Spurred On community on Big Up. All the details of how are in the description box below. If you're watching on YouTube, please do give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I'm getting close to 12,000 subscribers. Let's get me over there. And of course, with I was going to say with Glasgow Rangers. No, with Manchester United, another huge British club on Thursday, which I deem to be the biggest game of the season so far. We won that trophy. Let's get into that semi-final. Come on, you Spurs.